Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome all new listeners, and welcome back to those who have heard my content in the past. If you want to know three things to avoid when collaborating with strength and conditioning coaches, you have to tune into this episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome all new listeners, and welcome back to those who have heard my content in the past. If you want to know three things to avoid when collaborating with strength and conditioning coaches, you have to tune into this episode. Before I go on to the podcast, what is new? What is better? Just lots of family time. This has been just good time with the family outside of the kids are out of school. So this has just been fantastic for them to have discussions and really get a glimpse into what they're thinking and what they're processing at the moment. My wife just got this fun little card game that is meant for a family to just have really good conversations. And one of the questions was like, what was your favorite vacation and why? Another one is like, what's your favorite part of the bedtime routine? What are some things you don't like that mom and dad do? So it really kind of just allows them to talk and to speak and speak their mind. And that's been a really good eye opener. As a parent, you're always trying to be the best version of yourself. So sometimes you can't, if you ask certain questions, kids won't answer them. So you have to find other ways to do it. So this is kind of our glimpse into that. So parenting 101, that's currently where we're at as a team. So but other than that, life is great. Family time is truly the heart of this week. So I'm blessed for that. All right, on to this podcast. Why are we talking about this? I am in a strength and conditioning kick at the moment. You ever had those times where you're working with certain patients and they, or like a specific injury or problem, and you haven't seen that problem for, I don't know, a year or months or whatever it is, and finally you get 4 or 5 of those people in your on your caseload for that week, and you're like, why is it raining wrist pain or shoulder pain or whatever it is? And so right now, I'm having so much more discussions about strength and conditioning with the PTs I mentor. And they're just questions about, when would you introduce this? When do you decrease volume? Where is the riskiest time where you start to increase intensity? Where, like, all those questions. And so, one of the questions that came up was, what do I need to be aware of that strength coaches either hate or they like? And what do I need to avoid? How do I tiptoe around it? Do I be more upfront? Do I be more direct? What's the best way? So I wanted to share that. I can break it up into three fundamental things. If you can do these three things, you'll be able to collaborate with strength coaches with ease and very quickly, actually. So after working with some of the best strength coaches on the planet, I've made my mistakes and I don't want you to make those. So I'll share my clinical pearls and things that they truly love so that you can take advantage of that and approach everyone confidently and really be able to help your local community. All right. All right. So the first one, this is really fundamental, but for those of you who've been following me around for a while, I call anytime that you're the main point person of a specific phase in a rehab program, I call them chefs. Like, who's the main chef, right? So, say for instance, it's on the field management, and you're not, you don't have the credentials. You're not an athletic trainer. You're not the sports PT. The primary person at the event, maybe a local athletic trainer, is the main chef. That's their job. Maybe post-op day one or um, you know, uh, during the surgery, that surgeon is the main chef. But post-op, from day 14 and on, or whatever the number is, you're the main chef. And then at some point, when does the strength coach become the main chef? Is it only during off season, during preseason? Is it in season? Well, when does the technical coach, right, the soccer coach or the baseball coach or the pitching coach, when are they the main chef? So you kind of have to figure out who's the main chef for the given timeline. So I think the first part is to determine who is the main chef for the given phase that you're discussing. So if you say, hey, I'm working with a strength coach, okay, give me the phase of healing that this person has. They're in their 18th week post-op. Okay, so who's the main chef? Me. Okay, sounds good. But now, where does the strength coach um, play a role in this? And then when does that transition to them being the main chef, because you have to find out when that transition point is, because at some point you have to be able to like give the baton to the next person. You can't hold it the whole time. They're not in a remodeling phase their whole life. And I think PTs, we want to hold on to that remodeling phase and be like, we're the ones who can control it. But at some point that athlete has to be get bigger, better, stronger. And PTs are really good at neuromuscular control, and we're really good at muscular endurance, maybe even muscular hypertrophy, but we're not really good at strength development and power development. So when does the strength coach or the personal trainer or the fitness coach or the athletic performance coach, whatever you call them, when do they take a lead on that? And so you kind of have to determine, when are you the main chef and when are they? And that's how you can determine when to make transition points. And so if that's the case, you kind of both have to decide, when is that happening and what are you taking control of? If the other person is taking control of their fitness or general fitness, just for conditioning, great, you get to control that. I'm doing the stimulus and adaptation on their knee. You can have core, shoulders, and upper body and have fun in the pool at whatever intensity you want. But anything lower body strength development, I own them until they're week 12. Other than that, I'll transition them over to you, and and that's where you have to kind of figure out, who's the main chef. And that's a big deal. And the biggest thing you can do is understand when the transition point happens. Is it week 22? Is it week 16 when they're going to take it all? Or is it week 29 or 50 when the technical coach takes it over? You have to determine when those transition points in. And if you can't determine that on paper ahead of time, you're going to have a bad relationship across the board, because it's like you're always playing this like, well, I don't know, maybe you can. No, no, it's mine. And when a mistake happens, everyone points fingers, and that's when problems arise. So if you're looking to minimize problems, work it out on paper and make sure everyone understands. Listen, from week 0 to 28, I own it. I got it. Okay. But then the strength coach is gonna be like, okay, well, like, can I not do upper body work at week 1? Or I know it's a lower body case, but can I start a upper body? Yes. Okay. So am I the head chef for upper body? Yes. Okay, great. What about core work? And always that gray line starts to happen. And the technical coach is like, well, if they're a lower body athlete, when can they start to shoot the ball? When can they start kicking? So when do I get to transition? So those transition points are very critical, but they're actually the most at risk when the athlete starts to have a large change in volume or in intensity. That's where most sports PTs have a hard time, is because we're a high volume profession and we don't have a lot of high intensity. And so when that transition point happens, there's a lot of risk. And so you kind of have to look at, on paper, across 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, when are those time points happening and who gets to be the main chef. You can do that early. You establish great relationships. So that's the first thing you have to do to be able to collaborate with anybody, especially strength coaches, because they're always hungry for timelines and they always want to understand it and be a part of it. And if you can't do that, you're going to have this vague relationship where you're never defining it. And sports PTs, we are the kings and queens of being verbal and vague. We don't like writing things down because we don't want to commit to, like, well, maybe they're going to be kind of at risk. I don't want to put that down, so I'm just going to be verbal and vague. And so being vague is like, yeah, yeah, month, stage 3, month 20 to 20, or it's weeks 20 to 28. We'll work on that. And so you're like, all you did was just push timelines out because you're afraid to commit to something. So at some point you have to. So always figure out who your main chefs are, okay, at what time points, and then learn how to integrate everybody, okay? The number 2 thing, to, things to avoid when collaborating with strength coaches. So um, number 1 is you figure out who the main chef is. Number 2 is you need to figure out how you can add in strength, energy system development, and practice into a rehab program. So PTs don't like to think like that, right? We just like to think, well, they're just going to be rehab specialists their whole life. They're just going to rehab the whole time. But outside of that, the strength coach and the technical coach, what they want to know is, well, wait a minute. So when can I start to introduce these things? And if you give me a person who's really good at rehab, they're not fit, they're not strong, they're atrophied, and they're not really good at their sport anymore. So I can't have just a rehab athlete. I need them to be well-rounded. So in order to collaborate better with strength coaches, one of the things to avoid is don't have just a rehab mindset. You can't, you're going to ruin the relationship. So what you need to do is you have to have a collaborative program, which includes, if you can have some building blocks, what you have to do is you have to build into, okay, so when and what are they doing from a technical side? When can they start kicking? When can they start running? When can they start sprinting to be able to do ball drills, short toss, long toss, whatever the sport is? Then you have the rehab, which you're going to own. And then from a fitness standpoint, when can they start doing energy system development? Meaning, when can they run? When can they swim? When can they be on a bike? When can they actually do conditioning? So those main pillars need to be foundations. And then the last one, if you can, is the general like wellness side of that. So the sleep, nutrition, hydration, conversation. That's very, very critical to understand. So one dial or one bucket that you have over here is being able to support the technical side and getting them back into sport. The rehab side, be able to transition them safely with good mechanics. Then the fitness and performance side of when can they start to train a little bit higher intensity, volume, and whatever it is, and what are they doing from a fitness standpoint just to maintain lung capacity. And the last one is, can they be able to maintain some level of good hydration, good sleep, and good nutrition? And you have to be able to help support that whole gamut. And if you can't, that athlete's going to have great knee mechanics, but poor fitness, poor mechanics, poor technical skill, and they weren't able to recover, so they had more swelling and all these other things. So if you have a very linear based approach to your rehab process, that's what your athletes are going to have. That's their outcome they're going to have. And so when you start working in a multidisciplinary fashion, you start to realize, wow, PTs, when you work in a silo, you have very deconditioned athletes. You have high volume, good mechanics, but they have no intensity. They didn't have the hypertrophy. They weren't strong. They can't get back to sport as fast as they can, and they were under recovered. So if you're a sports PT looking to work and collaborate with strength and conditioning coaches, one of the things to avoid is having a linear mindset when it comes to your program. The thing to do when you're working with these individuals is saying, okay, I understand these four pillars. Which ones do you need me to be a part of? And the technical coach might say, like, well, I got this one. Can you take care of the recovery and the rehab? Strength coach is like, that's fine. I can blend in. I'll be the sous chef or the person behind the scenes and help you with that. And so if everybody's on the same page, you're like, okay, now you're working as a team. Now you can actually stop being, so prideful and be vulnerable and say, hey, listen, I'm not the strongest with this part, this transition point. This is where I can use your support. So have that understanding. So number one is don't always assume that you're the main chef. Figure out who the sous chefs are, and when you become sous chef and you have somebody else become the main chef, that's when you take a step back. So don't always assume you're the main one. Number two, uh, don't don't put yourself where you're only having a linear mindset and you're only working in a rehab process. Understand that you need to consider strength development, energy system development, recovery into a comprehensive plan. So don't be linearly drawn to create your programs for your athletes. And the third one, this is a tip to avoid, and um, I see a lot of sports PTs guilty of this, and I have a lot of parents and strength coaches who say this is the thing they appreciate most when I'm working on a case, and that is don't let the athlete be the main communicator, meaning don't use the athlete as a conduit, as a communicator, as a mediator, because that athlete, whether they're 25 or 16, anytime you tell somebody something and they tell that same story to somebody else, you've heard these stories before, the number of times that it changes is exponential. So that story is going to change if they talk to their strength coach, they talk to their technical coach, they talk to their parents, they talk to their partner. Yeah, the PT gave me full clearance. And you're like, I did not. I said 90%. So you're going to have that athlete either change the story for the benefit or not remember. And so the best way to do this is take them out of the equation and don't let them be the mediator. Communicate directly with these individuals via text, via email, very centralized so everyone's on the same page. Don't do it verbal because that story will change and people forget. So what you do is to make sure that you protect the athlete and yourself, that it's communicated on paper so everyone understood. No, no, no. I said week 27, they're not doing plyos. They're only doing linear plyos. They're not doing multi-directional. They were not allowed to change direction. That's why they had a flare up. And so it protects yourself to make sure everybody's on that same page. So whether you're looking for things to do or you're looking for things not to do when you're collaborating with strength coaches or anybody in a multidisciplinary approach. Some of the newest members of the Sports PT Academy that I'm mentoring now are well established in their career, and they are in a multidisciplinary department or a type of setting, and everyone still struggles with these things. And you just need to simplify everybody's world. Don't overcomplicate it. It's not about who's been there longer, who has best credentials, who has the superstar athlete. It really doesn't matter. The reality is that no one gets famous. No one gets the fame. The athlete does, and that's who deserves it. That's the one putting in the work. We're merely behind the scenes supporting that person. And if you are considering that you want the stardom, that you want the notoriety, you're in it for the wrong reason and you're on the wrong team. And if you feel yourself you're in that type of a scenario, who cares? Why are you so worried about it? The reality is you're doing your job because you care, not because somebody else wants the fame. Who cares? That person will phase himself out at whatever cost at some point in their career. And I've lived that dream. I've lived it where I was in a multidisciplinary setting, and there was other people who wanted to start them. It's okay. Just play this super long game, kill them with kindness, do the right thing, over communicate, use these tips, and then eventually those people get phased out, and you're doing your same thing. And PTs realize that, or sorry, your patients and your athletes realize that, and the best sports PTs will just kind of live and leave their legacy over time. And they're like, that's why athletes stick with you. That's why your reputation is so big, is because they're like, man, they're just consistent. They're very straightforward. They think of the athlete first, and it puts you in a position that your legacy is going to be huge across your professional resume. So um, let me reiterate the three things to avoid. Okay. Three things to avoid. Don't always assume you're the main chef. Don't think linearly and only have a rehab process. Make sure you consider strength, energy system development, and recovery in your comprehensive plan. And don't use the athlete as the main communicator or the mediator to convey messages or to convey, a rehab process that you're about to change or update or upgrade. You include everybody, so everybody's there to do it. So those are the three things to avoid when collaborating with strength coaches. The things to do is communicate who's the main chef, consider a comprehensive program, and communicate as a group and never centrally through the athlete. That's not their job. They're just there to like enjoy the time. Your job is to make sure that they are doing that seamlessly and they don't have as many hiccups as possible. That's your main role. So there you have it. I'm excited to be able to continue to share these. As I mentioned, I am in a strength and conditioning mindset. I think it's also because I'm working so heavy on refining my strength and conditioning summit course, which for those of you who were on my last podcast, I did announce I made a small adjustment. I know there was already some people registered, so I let them know. But essentially, I am moving the course up 1 week on the 10th and the 11th of June instead of the 17th and 18th. Whenever you're listening to this, this is in 2023, excuse me, when I'm recording this. So I moved that up a week earlier. So make a note on your calendar. I'm excited to see you. The biggest questions I'm having about this is uh, travel. I think a lot of people are wanting to do virtual, and I appreciate that, and I want to make it easy. So the biggest thing, the changes that I've made over probably the last two courses, is I've made it more conducive to virtual. I'm assuming that 80 to 90% of the people who attend now are going to be virtual. It's a big deal. I've had so much feedback on that people appreciate being able to do this like right from bed, being able to watch the replays, not having to travel. If you guys have families, flights, hotels, whatever it is, the logistics, it's just easier. I know a lot of PTs that I'm mentoring now just had recent babies, and I totally respect that. I know exactly where you're at. So, to be able to support that, I'm doing all the courses now virtual. You now have a virtual pass to it. You have access to the recordings and whatever you want. So, wherever you are listening to this, and you're like, man, I really want to learn some of this stuff, but I can't make it out to San Diego, and that's okay. I've been hearing you, I'm listening to you, and I've solved that challenge. So just join. The virtual pass is, I think, for the next couple weeks, it is. I think 2 more weeks. It is at a discount, significant discount. I think it's $700 off. So in the next 2 weeks, that goes up, and will continue going up until the day of the course. So if you're into it, this is probably the best place to do it. You have my satisfaction guarantee. Look it up on my website. I truly believe that you're going to love this. It's going to make a huge impact in your career. This is the next course for you. So if that's for you, go on the website, drchrisgarcia.com/summit, and grab your virtual pass, or come hang out with me in San Diego. So nonetheless, I hope that you are living life and truly enjoying every minute of it. And that you're getting your workouts, living your best life, your fitness life too. And I will see you guys on the next episode. Okay, take care. Bye, everyone.